Two teenage girls stood at a bus stop in downtown Seattle, everything they owned stuffed into garbage bags at their feet. Rain soaked through their thin jackets as they watched other families drive by in warm cars, heading to comfortable homes. Sarah and Emma Martinez had exactly $17 between them, nowhere to sleep, and a foster system that had officially given up on them the moment they turned 18. What they didn't know was that this moment of absolute desperation would set them on a path that would save thousands of lives and earn them both Purple Hearts. In the mountains of Afghanistan, the morning Sarah and Emma Martinez woke up homeless. They had been out of the foster care system for exactly 3 days. Their 18th birthday had come and gone without celebration, marked only by a social worker handing them each a manila envelope containing their birth certificates, a pamphlet about community resources, and a firm handshake goodbye. The group home that had housed them for the past 2 years couldn't keep them past their birthday. Rules were rules. The twins sat on a bench outside the downtown library, sharing a stale donut Emma had found in her backpack. They looked almost identical with their dark hair and brown eyes, but their personalities couldn't have been more different. Sarah was the planner, always thinking 3 steps ahead, while Emma was the dreamer who believed everything would somehow work out. Today, even Emma's optimism was wearing thin. "We could try calling Mrs. Rodriguez again," Emma suggested, referring to their last foster mother who had actually cared about them. Sarah shook her head. Mrs. Rodriguez had 3 other foster kids and lived in a tiny apartment. She had already done more than enough by letting them store some belongings in her garage. Sarah pulled out a crumpled piece of paper where she had written down addresses of homeless shelters. The first one they tried was full. The second one only took women over 20. The third one had a waiting list that was weeks long. By the time the sun was setting, they found themselves back at the library, which would close soon. "We can't sleep outside," Sarah said, her voice cracking slightly. She had been the strong one all day, but reality was setting in. Emma reached over and squeezed her sister's hand. "Remember what happened to Jessica?" Emma whispered. Jessica had been another girl in their group home who had aged out 6 months earlier. She had tried sleeping in parks and abandoned buildings until something terrible happened one night. The details were fuzzy, but Jessica ended up in the hospital and then seemed to disappear entirely. As they sat there trying to figure out their next move, a man in a military uniform walked past them. He was probably in his 30s, with kind eyes and a confident walk. He noticed the girls with their bags and stopped. "You two okay?" he asked gently. Sarah immediately became defensive. She had learned not to trust strangers, especially men who approached vulnerable young women. "We're fine," she said curtly, but Emma was more open. "We're just waiting for someone," she lied, but her voice betrayed her fear. The soldier studied them for a moment. "I'm Sergeant Mike Rodriguez," he said. "I work at the recruitment office down the street. I see a lot of young people in tough situations." He paused. "If you need somewhere safe to sleep tonight, there's a church shelter about 6 blocks from here. Pastor Williams runs it. Tell him Mike sent you." He handed them a business card and started to walk away, then turned back. "If you're interested, stop by my office tomorrow. The military isn't for everyone, but it's a way out for those who need one." That night, the church shelter provided them with warm soup, clean beds, and the first good night's sleep they had experienced in days. Pastor Williams was a gentle man in his 60s who didn't ask too many questions, but made sure they felt safe. The shelter could only house them for 3 nights, but it gave them time to think. The next morning, Sarah woke up with a plan forming in her mind. She had always been good at math and science, and she had heard that the military trained people in technical skills. Emma was more hesitant, but she trusted her sister's judgment more than anyone else's. They walked to the recruitment office that Sergeant Rodriguez had mentioned. It was a small storefront between a pizza place and a laundromat. Inside, the walls were covered with posters showing soldiers in various situations, some training, some helping disaster victims, some working with advanced technology. Sergeant Rodriguez was genuinely surprised to see them. "I wasn't sure if you'd come," he admitted. He sat them down and began explaining the different branches of the military and the opportunities available. "The thing is," Sarah said carefully, "we don't really have anywhere else to go. Would that make us bad soldiers?" "Some of the best soldiers I've known joined for exactly that reason. The military gives you structure, purpose, and most importantly, a family. The question is what you want to do with your lives. We want to help people. We've been helped by so many people over the years. Foster families, teachers, social workers. We want to give back. And we want to stay together," Sarah added firmly. "We're all each other has." Rodriguez nodded. There are ways to make that work, depending on what jobs you choose. Have you ever considered medical training? The twins looked at each other. Neither had really thought about specific careers. They had been too focused on just surviving day by day. The Army has an excellent medical corps, Rodriguez continued. Combat medics are always needed, and the training you receive translates directly into civilian healthcare careers later. It's demanding work, but it sounds like you two have already proven you can handle difficult situations. Over the next few hours, Rodriguez explained the process of enlisting, the commitment required, and what basic training would involve. He was honest about the challenges, but also painted a picture of opportunities they had never imagined. We need to think about it, Sarah said finally. Of course. This is a big decision, but don't take too long. You can't stay at the shelter indefinitely, and winter's coming. That evening, back at the shelter, the twins talked late into the night. Emma was excited about the possibility of learning medical skills and helping wounded soldiers. Sarah was more practical, focused on the steady pay, healthcare benefits, and job security the military would provide. It's scary, Emma admitted. What if we're not strong enough? We've survived this long, Sarah replied. We raised ourselves when our real parents couldn't. We've been through foster homes and group homes. We've taken care of each other. If we can handle all that, we can handle basic training. 6. The next day, they returned to the recruitment office with their decision. They wanted to enlist together and train as combat medics. Rodriguez was pleased, but also made sure they understood what they were signing up for. Combat medics don't just work in hospitals, he explained seriously. You'll be trained to provide medical care in battlefield conditions. You could be deployed to conflict zones. You could be in real danger. We're already in danger, Sarah pointed out. At least this way we'll be trained to handle it. The paperwork took several weeks to complete. They had to track down medical records, take aptitude tests, and pass physical examinations. During this time, they continued staying at various shelters and occasionally spent nights at the bus station when no beds were available. The day they signed their enlistment contracts, Rodriguez took them out for dinner at a nearby restaurant. It was the first time in weeks they had eaten a real meal at a table with plates and silverware. I'm proud of you both, he told them. You're about to begin a journey that will change your lives completely. It won't always be easy, but I think you'll find it's worth it. Emma raised her glass of water in a mock toast. To new beginnings, she said. To having a real home, Sarah added. 2 weeks later, they were on a bus heading to Fort Sam Houston in Texas for basic training. As the Seattle skyline disappeared behind them, both girls felt a mixture of excitement and terror. They were leaving behind everything familiar, even the difficult circumstances they had grown accustomed to. Do you think we're making the right choice? Emma asked as they watched the landscape change outside their window. Sarah considered the question. They had no family support, no college fund, no safety net of any kind. The military was offering them training, purpose, and most importantly, each other. I think we're making the only choice we had, she replied. But that doesn't mean it's the wrong choice. As the bus continued south through the night, both girls tried to imagine what their new lives would look like. They pictured themselves in uniform, learning to save lives, serving their country. They had no way of knowing that within 2 years, they would be dodging bullets in Afghanistan while treating wounded soldiers under fire, or that their quick thinking and medical skills would save dozens of lives and earn them recognition as 2 of the most decorated medics in their unit. For now, they were just 2 18-year-old girls with everything they owned in garbage bags, heading toward an uncertain future with nothing but each other and a determination to survive whatever came next. The bus rolled through the darkness, carrying them toward their destiny on the front lines of America's longest war. The alarm sounded at 4:30 in the morning, just as it had every day for the past 12 weeks. Sarah and Emma Martinez rolled out of their narrow bunks in perfect synchronization, their bodies having adapted to the rigid schedule of Army basic training. What had once seemed impossible, waking before dawn, completing hundreds of push-ups, running miles in full gear, had become second nature. Martinez twins, front and center, barked Drill Sergeant Patterson, an intimidating woman who had become something of a mentor to the girls despite her harsh exterior. The sisters snapped to attention, their uniforms crisp and their boots polished to a mirror shine. Tomorrow you graduate basic training, Patterson announced. In 2 weeks, you begin advanced individual training for combat medic certification. I want you to understand something. What you've accomplished here is just the beginning. Real soldiers are made in the field, not in the classroom. The twins had excelled in basic training beyond everyone's expectations, including their own. Emma's natural empathy and gentle nature made her excellent at treating injuries during medical scenarios, while Sarah's analytical mind helped her master the technical aspects of emergency medicine. They had finished in the top 5% of their class in both physical fitness and academic performance. As they prepared for their graduation ceremony, Emma reflected on how much they had changed in just 3 months. The scared, homeless teenagers who had boarded the bus in Seattle were gone, replaced by confident young soldiers who could field strip a rifle, navigate using a compass, and provide first aid under pressure. "Remember when you were afraid we weren't strong enough?" Sarah asked, adjusting Emma's uniform collar before the ceremony. Emma smiled. "I remember when you were afraid we'd made the wrong choice. I still think about that sometimes," Sarah admitted. "But look at us now. We have skills, we have purpose, and we have each other." The graduation ceremony was emotional for the twins. They had no family members in attendance, but Sergeant Rodriguez had driven down from Seattle to watch them receive their certificates. Seeing his proud face in the audience made them realize that family wasn't just about blood relations, it was about people who believed in you and supported your dreams. After graduation, the twins were assigned to Fort Sam Houston's medical training facility. The advanced individual training for combat medics was notoriously difficult, with a failure rate of nearly 40%. Students learned everything from basic anatomy to advanced trauma surgery, often practicing on realistic mannequins that simulated battlefield injuries. Their instructor, Staff Sergeant Jennifer Chen, was a veteran combat medic who had served 3 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. She was barely 20, 8 years old, but had seen more trauma than most emergency room doctors. On the first day of class, she made her expectations clear. "You are training to save lives under the worst possible conditions," she told the class of 30 students. "You will work on wounded soldiers while bullets are flying over your head. You will make life or death decisions in seconds. You will see things that will stay with you forever. If you're not absolutely committed to this, leave now." Nobody left. The training was intense. Students learned to treat everything from minor cuts to traumatic amputations. They practiced inserting breathing tubes while blindfolded, simulating night operations. They learned to triage multiple casualties, deciding who to treat first when resources were limited. Most importantly, they learned to stay calm under pressure. Emma discovered she had an intuitive understanding of trauma medicine. She could assess a patient's condition quickly and accurately, often noticing symptoms that others missed. Sarah excelled at the technical procedures, able to start difficult IVs and perform emergency surgeries with steady hands, even under simulated combat stress. 6 weeks into the program, they faced their biggest challenge yet, a comprehensive field exercise that would determine whether they passed or failed. Students were dropped into a mock battlefield where actors played wounded soldiers with realistic injuries created by Hollywood special effects artists. The exercise lasted 18 hours, with students rotating through different scenarios while instructors evaluated their performance. Emma's first patient was a soldier who appeared to have been hit by an improvised explosive device. His legs were mangled, and he was losing blood rapidly. In the chaos of simulated gunfire and explosions, she quickly applied tourniquets to stop the bleeding, started an IV for fluid replacement, and called for immediate evacuation. Her calm demeanor and efficient treatment impressed the evaluators. Sarah faced an even more challenging scenario: multiple casualties from a vehicle accident, forcing her to triage and prioritize treatment. She correctly identified the most critical patient, a soldier with internal bleeding, and treated him first while directing other medics to handle the less severe cases. Her leadership skills and medical knowledge earned her the highest marks in the exercise. When the results were announced, both twins had passed with flying colors. Out of the 30 students who started the program, only 22 graduated. Sarah and Emma were among the top 5 performers, earning them the opportunity to choose their first duty assignment. "Where do you want to go?" Staff Sergeant Chen asked them during their exit interview. The twins looked at each other. They had discussed this possibility many times during their training. Most new medics were assigned to support units in safe locations for their first deployment, but they knew that wasn't what they wanted. "We want to go where we're needed most," Sarah said firmly. "That would be Afghanistan," Chen replied. "The 82nd Airborne Division is deploying next month. They need experienced medics for forward operating bases in hostile territory. It's dangerous work. You'd be stationed in areas where contact with enemy forces is frequent." Emma spoke up. "That's exactly what we trained for." Chen studied them carefully. "You two are good medics, but you're still very young. Combat is different from training. Are you sure you're ready?" "We've been ready our whole lives," Sarah answered. "We just didn't know it yet." 3 weeks later, the twins found themselves at Fort Bragg in North Carolina, preparing for deployment with the 82nd Airborne Division. The base was bustling with activity as soldiers prepared for what would be a 9-month deployment to eastern Afghanistan. Their new unit commander, Captain Maria Santos, was an experienced officer who had already completed 2 deployments. She welcomed the twins but made sure they understood the gravity of their assignment. "You'll be stationed at Forward Operating Base Chapman," she explained, pointing to a location on a map of Afghanistan. "It's in a mountainous region where Taliban activity is high. The base is small, only about 200 soldiers. And you'll be the primary medical support for patrols and operations in the area." The twins spent 2 weeks training with their new unit, learning to work with the soldiers they would soon serve alongside. They practiced medical procedures specific to combat injuries and learned to operate in the confined spaces of armored vehicles. Private First Class Marcus Johnson, a 19-year-old soldier from Georgia, became one of their closest friends during training. He had joined the army straight out of high school and was nervous about his first deployment. "You two seem so calm about all this," he told them during a break in training. "Aren't you scared?" "Terrified," Emma admitted. "But we've learned that being scared and being brave aren't opposites. Sometimes you have to be scared to be truly brave." Sarah nodded in agreement. "We've been through difficult situations before. We know we can depend on each other, and now we know we can depend on our training too." The night before deployment, the twins called Sergeant Rodriguez from a payphone at the base. He had become a father figure to them, checking in regularly during their training. "I'm proud of how far you've come," he told them. "When I first met you, you were 2 scared kids with nowhere to go. Now you're trained soldiers about to serve your country in combat. That takes incredible courage." "You saved our lives that day," Sarah said. "If you hadn't pointed us toward the military, we might not have made it." "You saved your own lives," Rodriguez replied. "I just showed you a door. You were the ones brave enough to walk through it." The flight to Afghanistan took nearly 24 hours, with stops in Germany and Qatar. The twins had never been on an airplane before, let alone traveled halfway around the world. As they flew over the Atlantic Ocean, they looked out the window at the endless expanse of water and clouds. "No going back now," Emma said quietly.
"Would you want to?"
Sarah asked. Emma considered the question. They were heading toward a war zone where they would face dangers they could barely imagine, but they were also heading toward their purpose, using their training and skills to save lives and serve something larger than themselves. "No," she said finally. "This is where we're supposed to be." The plane began its descent toward Bagram Airfield, Afghanistan. Below them stretched a landscape of mountains and deserts unlike anything they had ever seen. Somewhere in those mountains was Forward Operating Base Chapman, where they would spend the next 9 months testing everything they had learned and discovering what they were truly capable of. As the plane touched down on the runway, both girls felt their hearts pounding with anticipation and fear. They were about to begin the most challenging and important chapter of their lives, far from the Seattle streets where they had once been homeless and afraid. They were no longer just survivors. They were soldiers, medics, and sisters ready to face whatever came next together. The helicopter touched down at Forward Operating Base Chapman in a cloud of dust and noise. Sarah and Emma Martinez grabbed their medical bags and ran toward the landing zone, their boots pounding against the hard-packed earth. It was their 6th month in Afghanistan, and what had once seemed like chaos now felt like a deadly choreography they knew by heart. "We've got 3 wounded coming in," shouted Lieutenant Rodriguez over the sound of the rotor blades. 2 gunshot wounds and 1 IED blast victim. ETA 2 minutes. The twins immediately sprang into action. Sarah began preparing the trauma bay while Emma gathered the necessary medical supplies. They had performed this routine dozens of times, but each casualty still brought the same surge of adrenaline and determination. The first soldier off the helicopter was Private Johnson, the same young man from Georgia who had befriended them during training. His left arm was mangled from an explosion, and he was conscious but in severe pain. "Hey, Marcus," Emma said calmly as she began cutting away his torn uniform. "We're going to take good care of you. I need you to stay awake and talk to me." "It hurts so bad," Johnson gasped, his face pale from blood loss. "I know it does," Emma replied while Sarah started an IV line. "But you're going to be fine. Remember that conversation we had about being brave? This is your moment." Working together with practiced efficiency, the twins stabilized Johnson's condition and prepared him for medical evacuation to the larger hospital at Bagram Airfield. His arm would require multiple surgeries, but he would survive and eventually return home to his family. The second casualty was more challenging. Sergeant Williams had taken a bullet to the chest, and his breathing was labored. Sarah immediately recognized the signs of a collapsed lung and began preparing for an emergency chest tube insertion, a procedure she had practiced hundreds of times in training but had only performed twice in real combat conditions. Emma, I need you to maintain pressure on this wound while I insert the chest tube, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. As Sarah carefully inserted the tube between Williams's ribs, Emma monitored his vital signs and provided encouragement. The procedure was successful, and within minutes Williams was breathing more easily. The third soldier had suffered multiple shrapnel wounds from the same IED blast that had injured Johnson. None of the wounds were immediately life-threatening, but they required careful cleaning and treatment to prevent infection. As they worked on the casualties, Captain Santos approached their medical station. The twins had earned her respect over the past 6 months through their skill, dedication, and courage under fire. Outstanding work, both of you, she said quietly. Johnson's going to keep his arm because of how quickly you responded to his injuries. Just doing our job, ma'am, Sarah replied, but Emma could see the pride in her sister's eyes. It's more than that, Santos continued. I've been in the army for 12 years and I've never seen medics work together the way you two do. You anticipate each other's needs, you never panic, and you genuinely care about every soldier you treat. After the wounded soldiers were evacuated, the twins cleaned their equipment and restocked their supplies. It was a routine they had developed to stay ready for the next emergency, which could happen at any time. That evening, as they sat outside their bunker watching the sunset over the Afghan mountains, Emma reflected on how much their lives had changed since that rainy night in Seattle when they had first met Sergeant Rodriguez. Do you ever think about what would have happened if we hadn't gone to that recruitment office? She asked Sarah. Sometimes, Sarah admitted, but I try not to dwell on it. This is our life now, and I'm proud of what we've accomplished. Even when it's terrifying. Especially when it's terrifying. Fear keeps us sharp, keeps us focused on doing our job right. 2 weeks later, their unit received orders for a particularly dangerous mission. Intelligence reports indicated that a high-value Taliban leader was operating from a compound in a remote mountain village. The mission would require an overnight patrol through hostile territory, and the twins would be the only medical support for the 20-soldier team. The patrol began before dawn, with the soldiers moving silently through rugged terrain. The twins carried their medical supplies along with their weapons, ready to provide treatment if anyone was wounded during the operation. They had been walking for about 4 hours when the first shots rang out. Taliban fighters had spotted the patrol and opened fire from elevated positions in the rocks above. The American soldiers immediately took cover and began returning fire, but they were pinned down in an exposed position. "Medic!" someone shouted from about 50 meters away. Through the chaos of gunfire, the twins could see Corporal Davis clutching his leg, blood seeping through his pants. Without hesitation, Sarah grabbed her medical bag and began crawling toward the wounded soldier, staying low to avoid the bullets flying overhead. Emma provided covering fire with her rifle while calling for additional support on the radio. Sarah reached Davis and quickly assessed his wound. The bullet had hit his thigh but missed the major arteries. It was painful but not life-threatening if treated properly. "You're going to be okay," Sarah told Davis as she applied pressure to stop the bleeding. "The bullet went clean through. I'm going to bandage this up, and then we need to get you to a safer position." As Sarah worked on Davis's wound, Emma continued to monitor the tactical situation. The Taliban fighters had the advantage of higher ground, but American air support was on the way. They just needed to hold their position for another 20 minutes. Suddenly, a rocket-propelled grenade exploded near their position, showering them with rocks and dirt. Davis cried out in pain as debris struck his already wounded leg. "We need to move him now," Emma shouted to Sarah over the noise of the firefight. Working together, the twins managed to drag Davis to a more protected position behind a large boulder. Sarah continued treating his wounds while Emma helped coordinate the patrol's defensive efforts. The firefight lasted nearly 2 hours before air support arrived and forced the Taliban fighters to retreat. When it was finally over, Davis was stable and ready for helicopter evacuation. "You two saved my life," Davis told them as they waited for the medical helicopter. "I've never seen anyone so brave under fire." "We're just doing what we were trained to do," Emma replied, but she felt a deep sense of satisfaction knowing they had made a difference. The mission was ultimately successful. The Taliban leader they were seeking was captured, and all American soldiers survived thanks to good tactics and quick medical care. 3 months later, as their deployment was nearing its end, Captain Santos called the twins into her office for their final performance review. "I'm recommending both of you for promotion to specialist," she announced. "More importantly, I'm putting you in for Purple Hearts and Bronze Star medals for your actions during the mountain patrol." The twins were stunned. They knew they had performed well, but they had never expected such recognition. "Ma'am, we appreciate the honor, but we were just doing our job," Sarah said. That's exactly why you deserve recognition, Santos replied. The best soldiers never think they're doing anything special. They just focus on serving others and completing their mission. The awards ceremony took place 2 weeks before they were scheduled to return home. Sergeant Rodriguez had flown all the way from Seattle to attend, and his presence meant more to them than any medal. I always knew you two were special, he told them after the ceremony, but seeing you now, decorated combat veterans at 19 years old, I'm amazed at what you've accomplished. The twins had indeed accomplished something remarkable. In 9 months of combat deployment, they had treated over 100 wounded soldiers. Not a single American soldier had died while under their care, a statistic that spoke to their skill and dedication. As their plane lifted off from Bagram Airfield for the journey home, both girls looked out the window at the Afghan landscape they were leaving behind. It had been the most challenging and rewarding experience of their lives. So what's next? Emma asked as they settled in for the long flight. I've been thinking about that, Sarah replied. The Army is offering to send us to college to study advanced emergency medicine. We could become physician assistants or even doctors. That sounds perfect. We could keep helping people, but in hospitals instead of combat zones. At least until the next deployment, Sarah said with a smile. 5 years later, both twins had completed their college degrees and were working as physician assistants in military hospitals. Sarah specialized in trauma surgery, while Emma focused on pediatric emergency medicine. They had both married soldiers they met during their service, and Emma was expecting her first child. During a visit to Seattle to see Sergeant Rodriguez, now retired from the Army, they drove past the downtown library where they had once sat as homeless teenagers with nowhere to go. Look how far we've come, Emma said, pointing to the bench where they had spent that terrifying night years earlier. Sometimes I wonder if we would have found our way without the military, Sarah mused. But then I remembered that we were already survivors. The Army just gave us the tools to help other people survive too. As they drove away from their old neighborhood toward their new lives as successful medical professionals and decorated veterans, both women felt grateful for the journey that had brought them from homelessness to heroism. They had discovered that their destiny wasn't just to survive, but to help others survive as well. The scared 18-year-old girls who had once stood at a bus stop in the rain had become confident women who had saved lives on the front lines of war and were now using their skills to help heal others in peacetime. Their story was proof that sometimes the most difficult circumstances can lead to the most extraordinary opportunities, especially when you have someone to share the journey with you. Their bond as sisters had carried them through homelessness, military training, combat deployment, and into successful careers. They had found their family in each other and their purpose in service to others. It was more than they had ever dared to dream during those dark days when they had nowhere to call home.